Hello everybody and welcome back to Nerdy Miniatures, and in today's video we're going to be painting what has quickly become one of my favourite miniatures to date, the mighty champion of the Space Wolves, Arjac Rockfist. So you want to see how I did it? Then just keep on watching. To begin, I sprayed the figure using grey sear spray paint. This consists of the figure, the base and a shield, so I sprayed them all separately as I was painting them individually as well. Once they were dry, I moved on to his armour. For this, I used the aptly named Rust Grey and painted this all over, doing 2 coats for maximum coverage. Around his neck and around his leg are some little detailed chains. For this, I used Avalan Sunset, and I hit his tags and a few other parts of the figure to create the iconic blue and grey and yellow colour scheme that the Space Wolves seem to have. Next, it was time to move on to the metallic elements. For this, I used Lead Belcher. I filled in the emblems on his legs and arms, and I think this actually looked really good against the blue-grey armour. Next, it was time to move on to the skin. For this, I mixed 2 shades, Bugman's Glow and Kislev Flesh, which creates a nice tan shade, and brushed this over his face, as this was the only skin visible. But to prevent this from looking too flat, I went in afterwards with Kislev Flesh on its own to build up subtle highlights and a shift in dimension of the skin. Next, it was time to move on to the leather elements. For this, I used Mournfang Brown, applying it to the strap of his hammer and to his belt that holds various tools. Once that was done, I moved on to his apron. For this, I mixed Grey Sear and Abaddon Black to make a dark grey, which I applied to the apron and then quickly touched up any of his tools using Lead Belcher. Now it was time for shading. Starting with Reichland Flesh Shade, I applied this to his skin and to the hammer before moving on to the rest of his armour. For this, I used Nuln Oil to create a grubby look. Next, it was time to move on to my shield and my base. I painted these alongside each other, so you will see me jump between the two because it cut down on my painting time. For the shade, I used the aptly named Rust Grey again and covered the front panel of the shield before leaving it to dry. I then moved on to the base. For this, I wanted to create an ice base, which I have a tutorial on an ice base on this channel, so if you want to see in more detail how I did this, then please watch that. To begin, I started with Lothern Blue, and I made this quite wet as I wanted it to be really watery. And whilst it was still wet, I immediately added Blue Horror, spreading it out across the base, letting the colours bleed together. Next, I jumped back onto Arjac, and for this I quickly painted his beard using the shade Grey Sear. I gently applied a light layer over the hairs, and then into his bushy eyebrows as well, before moving back on to his shield, where I used the shade Retributor Armour on the edges of his shield. Using some lead belcher, I then added some scratches to the armour before adding the same shade to the centre of his shield. It's upon recording this that I realised my hand was in the way for a lot of this part, but as you can see at the end, the centre of the shield is silver. On the shield are 4 lightning bolts, which I painted using the colour Avalan Sunset. I then jumped back into Arjac, where I used the shade Reichland Flesh Shade and applied this in small sections to Arjac's armour to create rust, as this armour has seen quite a bit of battle. Using the shade Evil Sun Scarlet, and then applied this to the shield, focusing on the hammer, before covering it with Nuln Oil to reveal the runes engraved into the piece. Moving back onto the base, I went in with the technical paint Ard Coat and applied a thick layer of this and left it to dry overnight to a glossy, icy look for the base. The next day I used the shade Rakarth Flesh, applied this to any fangs worn by the figure, on his necklace and on his leg, and to the bones on his base for attaching the pieces together. Once the glue was dry, it was time for our final step, the snow. For this, I used the technical paint Valhallan Blizzard, as it dries down it creates the effect of snow, so I built this up in layers until I was satisfied with the payoff. And that is it. That is Arjac Rockfist complete. Quickly one of my favourite figures I've painted in a while. I've been focusing a lot on armies on parade boards, and as much as I've enjoyed them, sometimes it's nice to have a smaller project to work on rather than a giant project. If you're a fan of the Space Wolves, then you might want to give this video a like, and down in the description you will find a link to 2 channels. The first is to Mr. Nerd's channel, so if you enjoy MMOs and action RPGs, then please feel free to have a look at that. And if you enjoy lore on topics like Lord of the Rings, Tolkien in general, and of course Warhammer, as well as other nerdy subjects, then you might want to have a look at my channel where I cover just that. Twice a week I put out videos on nerdy lore, mostly Tolkien and Warhammer content. Anyway, that'll be it from me today. Have a wonderful day, or night, wherever you are in the world. And as always, bye for now, guys.